Recently, I have received many complaints complaining that I have been making too many videos about Baofeng radios. So in response to those complaints, I am making this video about the Baofeng AR-152 Tactical radio. Before I get started, allow me to point out that some people will no doubt choose to become enraged and leave stupid comments demonstrating to everyone how stupid they are. And this is because, as I have stated many times in the past, I do not have a ham radio operator's license. And this particular radio is indeed considered a ham radio. And according to some people, because of the fact that I am not a licensed ham radio operator, I should not even be permitted to talk about radios in public. But verily I say unto you that most people that own one of these radios or are interested in acquiring this radio also do not have a ham radio operator license. And many of these people scoff at the idea of having to take a test and pay money to the governments to use our free airwaves. So allow me to point out that purchasing this radio does not require any license whatsoever. And owning this radio does not require any license, nor does it break any rules. And most of the people that own or will own one of these radios are fully aware that when the time comes to use a radio like this, the FCC and sad hams crying about licenses are going to be the least of their worries. So plan accordingly. The price for the Baofeng AR-152 Tactical radio is about $70, and you can purchase one from the Brushbeater online store. The Brushbeater store, if you are not already aware, sells products for the armed American. Americans that are not afraid of freedom. Americans that are willing to stand up for their liberty. Americans that, based on current events, always plan accordingly. And if you look in the information section of this video, you will find a non-affiliate link to purchase one of these radios. That means that if you purchase one, I get nothing. However, Brushbeater, the online store for armed, freedom-loving Americans, did send me this radio at no cost, so I got that going for me. So when you purchase the Baofeng AR-152 Tactical radio, in the box you will receive a user manual. The user manual is very well written in near perfect, if not perfect, English, and it goes over all of the functions of the radio. However, as with most manuals, it does not teach you radio theory or explain how to use repeaters or tell you what frequencies to use. It only goes over the functions and functionality of the radio. You will receive a wrist strap, not very tactical, but nonetheless timelessly fashionable. You will receive an antenna, and the antenna that comes with it is definitely bigger and far more robust than the short and limp little antenna that comes with most radios. You will receive a battery charger. One end plugs into the holes that you find in your walls. The other end plugs directly into the battery of the radio. You will receive a huge 12,000 milliamp hour battery. That is about 6 times more battery storage that comes with a standard Baofeng UV-5R battery, and 3 times bigger than the extended UV-5R batteries that you can find. My friend, if preventing premature battery discharge and lasting a long time is important, then you want this radio. And no, you cannot use this battery on a regular Baofeng UV-5R radio. And you will receive the Baofeng AR-152 Tactical radio. This one is desert tan in color, but it is also available in Tactigreen. The first impression one gets when holding the Baofeng AR-152 radio in their hand and playing with it a little is that it is big. It is really big. It makes a regular Baofeng UV-5R look like a little girl's toy, and even a Baofeng UV-5R with the large extended battery looks puny and weak when compared to this radio. The radio feels tight and durable, and all of the buttons have a good clicky feel. It does not feel cheap like many other radios. It has all of the buttons one would expect to find. On the top there is an alarm button, which makes a useless alarm noise. It has a very bright flashlight that is actually functional and usable. 2 programmable buttons on the side, and your push-to-talk trigger. On the other side, you will find a port for connecting accessories, such as an external microphone. It uses the standard K1 type connector, just like you'll find on any Baofeng radio. You will also notice that the keys are larger on this radio than most other radios. This makes it easy to use if you're wearing gloves or if you have fat sausage fingers. The buttons also light up and are quite bright, making them very easy to see and use in the dark. However, you can turn them off if you are running in blackout mode. The screen is... Oh, I almost forgot. Never mind, I have chosen to leave the protective plastic cover on to prevent any scratching. As I was saying, the screen is larger than the dinky little screen on the Baofeng UV-5R, and it is very easy to read. The screen is not cluttered with useless information or confusing, and this screen works very well in bright, direct sunlight. As far as actual usability, this is probably one of the best screens that I have encountered on a radio. It is not the prettiest screen, nor is it the fanciest screen, but in my not very at all humble opinion, this is the most usable screen of any radio that I have reviewed. Speaking of usability, this radio does a very good job at blanking out the background noise when you are transmitting. That means if there is a lot of noise nearby, whoever you are talking to over the radio will still be able to hear you over all the shooting and screaming in the background. However, this also means that you have to speak up and keep the radio closer to your noise hole than you do with most radios. And most important, and before you ask, yes, this radio does have a Roger beep. Normally, when you use this radio, you would want to ensure that the antenna is attached. However, for demonstration purposes, I'm going to remove the antenna so as to not poke my eye out. As previously alluded to, this is technically a ham radio, I think. However, this radio is not made for ham radio dorks, and it is not intended to be used for ham radio dork stuff like making contacts or finding anonymous men to chat with around the world. This radio is made for real men to communicate with other real men about important things when more conventional methods of communication may not be available. What I am trying to say in a nice roundabout way is, if you are a ham radio operator, this radio is not necessarily for you. So please, for the love of sweet baby Xenu laying in his manger on Christmas Eve night, do not leave stupid comments telling us why you think this radio is not good for ham radio use. Because Nobody cares what you think. Go away and stop watching my videos. The radio can store 128 channels, any mixture of regular, simplex, walkie-talkie frequencies or repeaters. The radio comes pre-programmed with 21 channels, not GMRS channels, not ham frequencies, just frequencies. That means that if you purchase 2 or more, they will talk to each other right out of the box. Just put them on the same channel, push the trigger button, and talk. This radio is chirp compatible, but be aware that the radio self-identifies as a Baofeng BF F8HP. So when using chirp, you have to tell it that this is a Baofeng BF F8HP radio. As I just mentioned, you can use this radio right out of the box. Programming the radio with chirp is not a requirement. Using chirp, however, does make your life easier and allows you to do a few advanced things, but for normal use, a computer and chirp is not required to use this radio. This radio is not locked like most other radios. This means that right out of the box, it can transmit on ham 2-meter, ham 70-centimeter, MERS, GMRS, a whole slew of business and private frequencies, and not that anyone would ever want to do it, but it can even transmit on NOAA weather frequencies. The box says that this radio can transmit at up to 10 watts, which is double the RF electricity's power that most handheld walkie-talkie radios can transmit. However, it is very important that I take a moment and explain something about RF electricities and power output. More RF electricity's power output does not necessarily mean the radio will talk more FARs, especially when using the stock antenna. So if you thought that a 10-watt radio can transmit twice as many FARs as a 5-watt radio, my friend, you thought wrong. However, if you are using an external antenna, like on the roof connected by a long stretch of cable, the difference between 5 watts and 10 watts can be huge. And this is because when you're using coax cable, particularly if that coax is long or if it happens to be not the most expensive top quality coax cable, you will lose a lot of your RF electricities as they travel along the cable. Those RF electricities will literally ooze out of the coax and fall out onto the ground. The longer the coax, the more RF electricities will ooze out. This means that if you are using a tiny 5-watt radio connected to a big antenna on your roof with 75 feet of coax, it is entirely feasible that only 1 or 2 watts will ever actually make it out to the antenna on your roof. However, if you are using a 10-watt radio because you have more power to start with, 5 or 6 watts would actually make it out to the antenna, which can result in more FARs. This radio outputs the most RF electricities when transmitting at around 172 MHz. Then the power goes down from there the further away you get from 172 MHz, but the RF electricity's output is still roughly double that of a regular Baofeng UV-5R and more than what you can get out of a Baofeng BF F8HP 8-watt radio. And as you can see, this radio is outputting just under 10 watts, pretty much just as expected. The FARs on this radio using the stock antenna are as to be expected. I was able to talk to my friend Conrad, the chef, 13 miles away. However, it is very important to bear in mind that I live atop the golden hilltop, overlooking the slums below, and this affords me very good line of sight between me and the slums below, including all the way to my friend Chef's house 13 miles away. What I mean to say is that your FARs will vary depending upon what is between you and the other radio you wish to talk with. However, the additional power of the Baofeng AR-152, those 9 or 10 watts, will help you get through stuff such as trees or houses full of fat people. That extra power will help push through those things and penetrate better than a weak little 4 or 5 watt radio. The antenna is a dual band antenna, So it is supposed to work best at around 144 MHz and 440 MHz. And according to my antenna analyzer, it's not too far off from that, but take that with a bag of salt because it is very difficult to get an accurate reading on a Walkie Talkie radio antenna. And I don't know how to use the antenna analyzer. The point that we should be focusing on here is that some frequencies will do better on this antenna than others, pretty much like every other antenna on the planet. So basically, this is a big, tough, tactically appropriate version of the Baofeng UV-5R with a huge battery that lasts for days, a bigger and better screen, bigger buttons, better antenna, and double the RF electricity's output of the tiny and weak Baofeng UV-5R. And unlike most other ham radios, it is not locked and it is able to transmit and receive UHF, VHF, MERS, GMRS, ham, NOAA, and private business frequencies. And most importantly, it looks cool.